Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to get singles for all your Force of Will and other trading card games, as well as these amazing patrons.
Thank you for your support. Enjoy the video.
Hey there, Rulers. DMO73 here, bringing you a feature match for the week between two Stranger decks. I do want to keep one thing in mind really quickly. There was a little bit of a glitch when we were doing the recording. We're trying a few new things out to kind of speed up production for recording's sake. And so I'm on the left and Paul is on the right. Our two sides got swapped. So I am on the left playing red-white Lenneth Goddesses. But my stuff is on the right, including my life total. That is accurate. And Paul is on the right, playing Paul's red, blue, white Lenneth control. And he is on the left in terms of the stuff at the bottom of the screen. So Paul is on the right, but his info is on the bottom left. I'm on the left, but my info is on the bottom right. Small technical snafu, should be all fixed for next time. The life totals are accurate to the player that they're attached to. So my life total's in the bottom right, Paul's is in the bottom left. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Paul is going to be starting us here on turn 1, hitting that Heat Ray. Having no turn 1 play. Adarachtes Memoria on my side. My deck is a little bit more of a tempo, kind of aggressive deck. So we're going to see that turn 1 Guinevere come out on my side, which is great. It just generates more value the longer the game goes. He's going to go ahead and play his Caduceus. So that's going to get him, he's going to pick the modes to exile, then draw, and get a Stranger. So he's going to do that. Get his Dark Atlas RFG'd. And he's going to get a random Stranger into his hand. So there's multiple different ways to execute this whole Stranger thing. You can roll a die, you can have your opponent pick at random, all kinds of stuff. We did randomize both Stranger decks before the match started. So second Adarachtes Memoria out from my side, ultimately choosing a pass the turn there. And then so we go to Paul. At the end of the turn, he's going to try to use the Invasion of Belisarius to try to kill Guinevere. We're going to respond by sacking her to draw 2 and discard, discarding an Allosaurus to the grave. At that point in time, he'll RFG the top 3 cards of his deck, and then gets to go put Invasion into the graveyard where it has Remnant, so it just gets to be used again. Really good use of Caduceus there, if he doesn't have something else to be using it for. One, it fuels his RFG stuff, which is great because he's looking to try to use Light of Raisin Revive to cheat in things effectively, and also just have access to all these kind of late game pushes. And then also just serves as a removal source. So there's a lot of different ways that is advantageous. And Light of Invasion of Belisarius just gets to sit in his graveyard, so he doesn't really care about that. End of his turn, we're going to use Light of Raisin Revive to go get a Light Regalia from my deck and put it into my hand. I'm sensing very quickly that this is going to be a game where having Regalia is going to be very, very important to be able to keep up against a control deck. So we're going to go ahead and spend that raise that way. Going into my turn, we're going to draw a card. Seeing that Magic Stone of Heat Ray. Quickly slamming down that Caduceus. So we're going to use the mode to RFG his 1-drop, and then we're going to get a Stranger as well. Our hand's pretty full, and my deck has a lot of ways to get the cards off the top very quickly. He's going to try to use Light of Raisin Revive in response to remove my Caduceus, or Caduceus, however you want to pronounce it, from the game. But I'm going to float the will in response, then I'll finish resolving the effect, so I get a random Stranger here. Using the 2 floating will to play Crossing Point. Crossing Point looks at the top 7 cards of my deck, grab any number of goddesses from among them, put them into my hand, and the rest immediately get RFG'd. And we see 3. We see 3 goddesses there. I hit 1 of each of the 3. So we've got a very full hand of goddesses at this point. Seeing whether or not I want to do something else with those remaining 2 will. Ultimately choosing to, I think, play another Caduceus. Or potentially choosing to just pass the turn. So instead we're going to play our Verdandi. Going to do a little cycling here. Getting rid of a Skuld to draw another card. And at the end of the turn, I believe I have to discard. I have 8 cards, I believe, in hand at this point. Now, it is important to note that you don't have to reveal goddesses with Crossing Point. Like, you can choose to just not reveal them if you have them, which is a very interesting trick to be able to set up for being able to make your goddesses bigger. In this situation, it didn't really make that much sense to do that. I'd rather just have them in hands, but it worked into Paul's favor because he was able to use Catechist to pay for the Invasion of Belisarius, which is a mage art that has Remnant from the grave. So really making use of that Catechist, or Caduceus, very effectively. Catechist, Caduceus. We're just going to call it CAD from here for the rest of the match. And with all those cards RFG'd, Holosaurus is definitely a 2-drop in his hand, and you see he has one. This is a really kind of meaningful way that Paul is using his deck. The Holosaurus is to help him kind of serve as his utility creature that also just happens to be this body. Gonna play an Orochi instead, which is this kind of progressive answer in his deck. It has barriers, so it's very hard for me to kill, and the longer it sits on board, just the more advantage it's gonna generate for Paul over the course of the game. Because if he ever, has leftover will at the end of my turn, he can just add additional counters to it, especially now that he has a Regalia. It's 4 counters for every 2 will, and eventually Orochi just gets so big and has Pierce that it doesn't matter. So we have to burn Scold herself with her own effect. We're getting 2 cards removed. That gets us, burns her for 4, so she doesn't quite die. Mainly just wanted to put a body out on board here and also help fuel the RFG a little bit. And then at that point in time, choosing to pass the turn. Going to Paul's turn, draws, and then before upkeep, we're going to go ahead and see 8 additional counters added to Orochi here from 2 pumps. The interesting thing to note here is both of these decks are making use of similar cards, but playing them in very different ways. I think Lenneth was designed to kind of facilitate this kind of deck experimentation. There's a lot of different ways you can build it. I think Paul's list is literally only playing Athenas in terms of the goddesses, whereas my deck is playing all 3 goddesses plus Athenas, so a lot more goddesses, and has some different kind of endgame pieces. Gonna go ahead and see that Stone Call. Paul having a pretty good handle on his will combinations right now. Using Catechist CAD to play another invasion. I'm just saying that's fine. There's 3. There's a bunch more. So Scold is definitely dead at this point. Swinging in for a grand total of 10. With the Orochi, I'll say take it. I go down to 3,000. Again, my life total's on the bottom right because of the little technical glitch. Playing Allosaurus for 2. So Allosaurus, when he enters, gets him any card that he wants and is removed from game area back to his hand. It costs 1 less for every card that he has in his RFG, down to a grand total, a maximum, or a minimum of 1 red and 1 white. A very cool card for these RFG decks. Paul thinking about potentially playing the Excalibur that he has in hand to have both of his Regalia online, but ultimately choosing to just pass the turn. In the end phase, we're going to use Izanami here to try to reanimate an Uther, targeting the Allosaurus. So he's going to respond to Uther's trigger to target. Thinking about it anyway. So the way Uther works is you target something and then at resolution remove the cards from game. So that's why you see me holding my graveyard. I'm waiting to see what Paul's going to do so I know exactly what I have to try to remove. Paul's going to go ahead and flash in that Dark Alice, draw a card, sacrifice the Allosaurus. You see he draws into a Seal of Lenneth as well. So what's he going to do with that second effect? He's just going to discard a CAD. And at that point in time, we're still going to remove from play 2 cards because we want to have my goddesses now online. So at this point in time, I have enough cards removed from the game, so my goddesses turn into being online. So I'll call Stone here with Lenneth, play a CAD to get a Stranger and remove his Dark Alice from the game. Paying 2 for an Amaterasu, so now my goddesses all cost 1 less. All my red and white resonators cost 1 void less, and all the goddesses are red resonators, fire resonators. And all my fire and light resonators gain +2/+2. So at this point in time, with enough cards removed from game, Uther is a 13/13 with precision. The hope being that I want to get just a little bit too big so that I can kill that Orochi. Unfortunately, Paul still has that 2-will up, so he could always, in response to my swing, try to pump up Orochi. So instead, I'm just going to try to go to his face for 13 damage. So that's fine, I'll take it. Goes down to 27. Now, ultimately, if I had had a Scold in hand, I probably would have just swung into the Uther regardless, because either he has to pump it up to try to save it, and then I just play the Scold, crash it into it, and call it a day, or he doesn't save it, and I've killed it, you know, at that point in time. Uses Raise and Revive during the end phase to flash in Athena from Miss RFG. Athena is a fantastic card, especially when you have all this extra will and CAD being able to produce for her effect. It gains a lot of life very quickly and can also be used as a nice board clear. Gonna try to use Seal of Lenneth on my CAD. I'll float the will in response so I at least have access to it. Now this is a little bit risky to use Seal of Lenneth on a Regalia, because if the Seal of Lenneth gets destroyed by any means, then my Regalia immediately enters and I get the Lenneth triggers, which is a little risky, but I think Paul's feeling pretty confident in terms of his ability to kind of control the board state right now, and he's not necessarily concerned that I might have any kind of addition hate. There's not a lot of it right now, so ultimately he's feeling pretty comfortable that that CAD is probably just going to stay gone at this point. So we swing in with Orochi. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm not going to take the I'm just going to take the hit, go down to 2,000. Definitely getting to a point where it's going to be challenging for me to try to come back, simply because Orochi gets Pierce if he gets too many counters, which is not good. And now I'm down to 12 life, and he gets to gain that 8, go back up to, he'll be up to 35 at this point in time, so his life should be a little bit different. But now he has extra counters on Athena and can start burning me and doing all kinds of stuff. Just for the sake of trying to gain some life back and getting access to another stranger, we're going to go ahead and use the Twin Adder Spiral. This burns it for 6. I'll gain 6 and get a stranger because I've awakened it. Having a Caduceus in my hand right now would have been really, really nice, because I would have been at a point where I could have played it, gotten a stranger, gotten to draw a card, gotten a stranger, gotten a judgment for free, could have RFG'd the Caduceus and with her trigger, floated the will from the one I already had, get a second one. Like, there would have been a lot of potential play lines there, but ultimately just not seeing that. CAD is not good. You also see I have an Ishtar there in hand, which is excellent to cheat in off of Lenneth's God Art. So we're using CAD to burn for 2 damage and then for 4 damage. Or sorry, to gain 2 life twice, I think, not burning. Just to gain 2 life so that Athena is now, I think, bigger. It has 3, so it's 14 to my 13 here. Choosing to not respond after he's gained that life, so we'll just go ahead and let the damage go through. Then he also gets to gain another 14 life, so go to 52, and then trigger Athena again. At that point in time, Athena's rested, so we're just going to go ahead and hardcast a Siegfried to kill her, and then just normally do Judgment. And the thought being here, I can at least get his Seal of Lenneth off the board, and get onto my CAD coming back into the board. I don't get the triggers, which is not great, but I still have access to the God Art, which is great for Ishtar. So I can instant speed bring out an Ishtar if I need to. So we'll go ahead and swing in with Amaterasu, who hits for 8 to get him down to 44, and then move from there. So the big problem here is I still only have 18 life. It's not a good position to be in, especially since he's about to be able to pump up Orochi, and then can pump up. I'm tapped out outside of God Art. Can't have those. There's nothing really in my board that can answer an Orochi, and he can just pump all of his will into it and have Pierce. And I'm only at 18, so like Orochi by itself with just the 2 pumps from his upkeep is enough to be able to do lethal. So if he can somehow find a way to clear the blocker or something like that, it's not good. Let alone the fact that he has an additional, if he calls stone, 1, 2, 3, 4 pumps, so an additional 16 to be able to pump through, which is more defense than any of my guys have, so it's just absolutely death. But we'll have to see if I can come back in any kind of way. Goes ahead and calls for that stone, swings in. You'll see me try to walk through the math here about like potential pumps and like, is there a way to survive or anything else? And can I crack back for lethal if I do X, Y, Z? You know, the pushback. I start to move Siegfried, and then I'm like, wait a minute, with Pierce, that's still enough for lethal. Then the thought becomes, well, wait a minute, I need to be able to gain life because the math doesn't work out. So he only has 12 defense. So he only needs to do 3 grand of damage, and he definitely has enough pumps for that. So we're kind of tracking how many potential pumps there are before I choose my blocker for sure. The best option I have here is just to block with Lenneth, because yes, I'll take damage from the Pierce, but I'll also gain life first. So that is the thought. Then I'll at least gain the life before I die from the Pierce damage. So we see the Goddard into an Ishtar, into a Allosaurus, I think, from the graveyard. Yeah, Allosaurus. To be able to then get a, I think I grab a Raisin Revive, yep, to just be able to keep things turned on. And then we block. Doesn't really matter though, because he just has an Anger Boda to be able to kill whatever I was blocking with. So at that point in time, it's going to kill Lenneth. He's going to win the game, and then we'll push on to game 2.
As we go into the next game, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the bell down below so you're notified when all of our videos goes live, and consider supporting the channel by being a member here on YouTube or by checking it out on Patreon for all the cool exclusive perks that come with supporting us. Thank you guys so much. Let's go to the next game.
So game 2 here, definitely hoping that the Lenneth deck can, the Goddess deck can kind of be more ahead on tempo in that game. You know, starting to establish pressure early, get the Goddesses online early. It's really kind of what the deck is trying to do. Ultimately choosing to go second, mainly because you don't. If there's a way in these kind of between these two decks, if there's a way to get your Regalia online turn 1 through Energize, it feels really, really good. And so that's kind of what I'm hoping for. Plays his cat on turn 1. Start to think about just slamming down the Caduceus and ultimately deciding to, yeah. So we're going to go ahead and remove his 1-drop and get a Stranger. Like my hand where it is. Ultimately, probably better to have drawn a card and removed a card just to turn stuff on. But the other thought is I also just want to keep everything off the board so that, like, again, in the form of a tempo deck, every card also steals a card from your opponent. And we really just want that to be the case. That way, too, if he happens to play a Caduceus on his turn, he's, like, tapped out just to do it, leaves his board wide open for me. So, like, in this case, he has to do get a Stranger, draw a card, remove a card. But, like, that's not going to do him anything. And at the end of his turn, I can do whatever I want with my Regalia. And then just go into my turn only having to deal with the Regalia wheel, not whatever he put on board. So, like that, end of the turn, we're going to use Raise and Revive to remove from game his Caduceus, because it can hit any entity that costs 3 or less. So once again, being that very tempo-oriented deck, my pressure early on is working to my advantage here. We're going to go ahead and play the White Wizard that we got off the Stranger just to set it up. We have this 9-drop, or this 900 attack at this point, because I put both the counters on himself. Drain. And we're a little bit risky, right? Because he has a lot of cards that just remove from game rather than deal any damage. But the thought is this is a body and we want to put pressure on. And we're still sitting on 3 will on my side because of the cat. So we put this pressure on here. We're going to start gaining life. We're going to start cracking him for 9 every single turn. So we're putting the pressure on him to say, like, okay, I need to start putting out bodies. I can't necessarily be this control deck. I have to do things during my turn, which is exactly what I want. So a Sacred Waveblade comes down, Awakened, taps him out for the whole turn just to remove from a card and get him a Stranger. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I don't mind that at all. Just keeping both sides of the board pretty clear here. Drawing for turn and then using my Regalia to do Crossing Point. 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, sorry, 7. There it is. choosing to hit no goddesses were hit there, but it's ultimately fine because it gets us to 9 cards removed from game, which is a really good spot to be in. A single more card suddenly turns on all of our goddesses for the rest of the game, which is a really good spot to be. So we're kind of up now. We're sitting on 4 will to his 4 as well, but we have Regalia. We still have Gwen on board, and he has nothing on board. So advantage-wise, we're in a much better spot than we were in last game. Playing out the Wizard Cat. Definitely something his version of the deck likes better because of the ability to look at that top card of the deck and go straight to the RFG as opposed to the graveyard. My deck does a little bit of graveyard reanimate and RFT reanimate. We also play Ruka in my list, which is why Guinevere's kind of been better. We're going to use Scald here to target his cat. In response, we're going to try to do the Invasion of Belisarius to kill Scald before Scald gets bigger. And in response to that, we'll use Guinevere to draw 2 cards and discard a card. So Guinevere resolves first. Draw and discard. Discard my own copy of Invasion. He's going to use his cat's effect to trigger to because he played a Mage Art. Draws a card. Then I burn his cat for 3. He then is going to use that peak at the top of his deck. And then lastly, we're just going to go ahead and use our own Holosaurus just to get it killed, get it off the board, and get some more cards in the RFG. And pass the turn. We're going to see a Twin Swords of Water and Mercy Stranger flash to put my Guinevere back on top of the deck. Not terrible. I mean, Guinevere is a nice draw card. My hand is pretty decent at this point. Thankfully, but also you see I have Regalia break there, so if he plays and that is a sideboarded card if he plays the Regalia break, so plays Regalia this turn, then I can just punish it on his turn so he just doesn't get as much value off of it. Hits me for 6, so I go down to 34. Again, my life total's in the right side because of that editing error. Calling Stone. Another cat. Seems to be debating between a couple different potential play lines here, or to just leave up his will. He does have an Izanami in hand. His graveyard doesn't have a ton of good targets for that right now, simply because we've been removing stuff from the game. But also, it's all just cats at this point. He hasn't really discarded anything. That's the disadvantage his deck kind of has, is that he doesn't really put a lot of stuff in the graveyard, whereas opposed to the Guinevere deck does. So instead, he's going to play this Phoenix. And at that point in time, we're just going to pass the turn. With that out of the way, we're just going to go ahead and just prevent his cat from being able to use his effect. We're going to go ahead and kill him and gain 6 life. Not going to worry about Awakening a Stranger, just want the cat dead to take advantage of our extra will here. Go into my turn. Out comes the Guinevere that we've already seen before. Calling for a stone, hits our next Ataractia's Memoria. Playing 3 to turn on Athena. Gets us a flyer, gets us into the position we were last time again of like, hey, you know, this is a good card for board clears. It's also a big flyer and has drain, and it's going to kind of continually put pressure again. Paul not having access to a Regalia right now is really, really good for us. because it keeps us ahead of him will-wise, which is exactly where the tempo deck wants to be against a control deck. The more that I can limit his plays, force him to be off-tempo, playing things on his turn as opposed to mine, makes any of, making his cards that he plays get less value with things like Guinevere, stuff like that. Having Regalia break to respond to him casting a Regalia is really, really good. So Angraboda trying to be used to destroy the Athena. He gets to gain the 1,000 life, goes up to 5 grand. Guinevere going to make sacrifice the Athena to draw 2 and discard. Again, it's that same kind of thing. Like, I'm going to make it so that his removal, yes, sure, he's still going to hit me for 6, but he's going to burn a card in 3 will and not actually destroy anything. I'm going to turn that into me drawing 2 and discarding 1. See, he finally does see that Caduceus there. Attempts to play it. Trying to find out what modes he's going to use to trigger for it. Get a Stranger, and then the remove from game, draw a card. Hitting a Light of Raise and Revive on the remove from game, not to draw a card, feels real bad. You want those Raise and Revives in your hand. It's probably one of the best cards in the set, just overall, because of its simple modes and its low cost and its quick cast. But overall, really sucks to see remove from game. At the end of his play, we're going to use that Regalia break. Say, look, you spent 2 will on your turn. We're going to make it so you can't use it. He is going to go ahead and use the Invasion of Belisarius from the graveyard. Hits another Light of Raise and Revive there, which feels real bad. And then I get to draw a card off Regalia break, and then I get to draw a card for turn. So again, I'm in a really good spot now because I'm going to be up at a total of 8 will against a control deck with only 1 will on my turn, which is exactly when the tempo deck wants to be playing. So we're looking to get a lot of advantage off of this real fast. Belisarius coming in for only 2 gets me whatever card I want for my remove from game. If there's a single copy of Raise and Revive, it's probably an easy grab. Scold would also be very good here, but you see we do have the Raise and Revive. Scold would be good because we could kill the, we could burn the Phoenix and then swing in and kill the Twin Swords of Water Mercy, all for 2. We happen to have a Scold in hand anyway. So we're going to target the bird, remove from play the top 2 cards of my deck, and we hit the castle, which is going to kill the bird. Saying, well, it's a long shot that I'm going to kill it, but we maybe do get to. So now I paid 2 will, and I removed 2 bodies from the board because Skuld has swiftness and is an 8/8 because of the cards removed from game. And I'm sitting on 4 will, including a Light of Raise and Revive and a second Regalia break. So plus pressure on board, and Paul is quickly getting to a point where board wipes are going to be what he needs to come back in this game. Barbados coming down here to say, okay, let's just push in a bunch of damage, I suppose. Rests everybody except for himself and does have that swiftness. A Siegfried to kill, killing the Belisarius. Because it is tapped down. Siegfried can only kill rested. Light of Raise and Revive in response to the Barbados swing. Trying to bring in Uther. You can't target the Siegfried because he has barrier red-black, but we can target the Barbados. And then we can use Belisarius that he just killed to kill Barbados, essentially. Not take the damage from that. And now we have that 11/11 target attack, precision from Skuld. Excalibur coming down here, gets to choose 1 trigger. Choosing to get a Stranger. That point in time having access to Excalibur and 2 other will as he goes into the end of his turn. We're going to try to use Regalia Break again.
just to kill those Regalia at the end of his turn so he just doesn't get much value off of them. He lets that happen. Draw for Regalia Break, and then draw for my turn. So again, control deck. We're going to float the 2 Will. Play another Caduceus, which will then kill the other one. So we can Judgment for 0 and get a Stranger. Do hit the Ishtar, which is exactly what we want to hit. It's probably one of the best things this deck can have off of the Judgment. Starting to read the effects about how mandatory things are, so we're recognizing that I need to kind of probably do some swings before I actually do the Judgment. We're going to go ahead and use Siegfried to Uther to kill Siegfried with the 1100. And then swing in for 8 with Scold. And then Scold will be the card that we remove from game when we Judgment, because we have to hit something. Coming down with the Athena, leaving ourselves with 3 Will open here, using the 2 floating Will from the first Caduceus that was played to then just gain life twice, which will then trigger and give us 2 floating, 2 light. So he's going to try to use Undine here with those 2 Will to put that Regalia back in my hand. There's a thought about the idea to go ahead and use Goddard in response. We're going to go ahead and do it. We're saying, you know what, we're feeling pretty confident here. You're tapping out. Let's at least get this Stranger, get out the Ishtar, put out this big set of board, get the Allosaurus, kind of start replenishing things if you're going to start putting stuff back into my hand anyway. We'll go ahead and just grab a Regalia Break here because we'll have access to red. The thought being that if you feel the need to play a Regalia here to try to come back, we have a 1-drop answer to try to kill it during your turn again, but also, hi, look at this gigantic board. At this point in time, I believe Paul's kind of only out is Holy Nova. This is just a lot of very large creatures on the board. Allosaurus and Ishtar can't be hit with Raise and Revive. Athena is very large at this point and can start burning stuff off. We've got Lenneth online. We know I have Regalia Break in hand, so playing a Regalia is probably just not advantageous right now. Anything he plays is potentially just going to get killed. He needs to wipe, and even if it's not, there's this massive board that's just going to be pushing in, at which point in time I'm going to have all my will available to remove whatever he has in blocker range to probably push through for lethal. If not, just gain a bunch of life. Plays his own Athena. Tries to gain 2 life. Tries to gain another 2 life. In response, we're going to go ahead and, response to the attempt to gain 2 life, we're going to go ahead and use Light of the Sacred Spirit to remove Athena from the game. So it won't see the life gain trigger, and if he wants to get anything else, he'd have to spend his will now, which feels really good because he'll get way less value out of it. So he'll still gain the 2 life. Athena gets removed from game, but doesn't see that second trigger come into play. And then at that point in time, he'll pass the turn. So moving to recovery. As we attempt to move into combat,
going to use Izanami here to play to bring Barbados back from the graveyard to rest my board. This does buy him some time, at least in terms of being able to stop the bleeding for that turn. Ultimately, though, we do have the ability to kill some stuff thanks to that, and while continuing to establish a board. So we'll just play the Siegfried to kill his Undyne, and we also just have Will available as well to play the CAD, because why not at that point in time, because it's just 2 Will for 2 Will, especially since we have Athena on board, and then we can just leave up the rest of our Will. Holy Nova does clear a lot and potentially gets him another Stranger. Doesn't kill Lenneth, though. But it would also tap him out if he wants to awaken it. Excalibur comes down. It's going to use its remove from play a card and draw a card. You can see here digging for the Holy Nova. Awakening of the Sacred Queen, present. I'm going to choose to immediately use it. Oh, nope, changes his mind in the last second. He knows I have that Regalia break in hand, so he's got to be a little bit careful. He probably needs to make use of this Excalibur kind of right now, because it's probably going to get killed at the end of turn. Says, you know what, let's go ahead and use it. Doing it the mode, I believe he's using it the mode to get a draw a card and gain 1,000 life. Sits in a Raise and Revive. Also not a Holy Nova, but does potentially get a bit of Athena back. Choosing to use it on Orochi, so he has a blocker with barrier. At the end of the turn, we're going to go ahead and use Regalia Break on that. And then before that finishes resolving, he'll put the extra 4 counters on Orochi twice. So he's got a 10-10 Orochi. Before recovery, we're going to go ahead and ping his Barbados for 4, gain, ping it for 6, gain, go up to 8, and then at that point in time, Paul's like, you know what, no, we'll just go ahead and scoop it up, and we'll move into the last game, because at that point in time he knows that there's no way Uther would just kill the Orochi and the rest would just swing in for lethal. So going into game 3 here, Paul choosing to take the draw. Ataraktia, the Memory off the top, no Regalia. See if we have a turn 1 play for Paul. Also a no. Going into my turn, slamming down the Orochi, saying, you know what? This did great for you before, and we want to be a tempo deck, so let's play it on my turn. Let's start pressuring you now, this way, with something that you can't target. So the control deck that doesn't have a lot of targeted removal, let's put a card that has only targeted removal, let's put something you can't target, and start putting pressure that way. A Verdandi to remove from game a card and draw a card. And that point in time, we're just going to pass. One thing to note that when we were playing in the tournament, this was timed. We were playing a 50-minute match, and so we were trying to finish within the 50 minutes. So we are moving a little bit faster, but also that kind of does lend itself to some of the plays that we're kind of taking here, which I think is good for you to kind of witness and experience and kind of why we did certain things. Using the Allosaurus' invasion to kill my Verdandi just to get it off the board and get some cards removed from game. End of his turn, we're going to race and revive in that Athenia that we used Verdandi for. It's kind of trying to be this really on-curve play. That raise and revive should be in my graveyard. You'll see us move it and fix it here in a little bit. Out comes the Caduceus. Move to mode to get a stranger and then draw a card, or get a card removed. Swing in for 8 in the air. No blocks, so we'll get to gain 8. Hit him for 8. Take him down to 32. Missed catching that life total, but he should be at 32, yep. I'm going to go ahead and raise and revive during my end phase there, using his Energize. Or sorry, during his standby phase, using the Energize. I think our life totals might be a little bit off. Should only probably be at 37 life, potentially. End phase crossing point. Gonna check what I want to keep in my hand. Potentially, we're gonna choose to keep 3 goddesses in our hand: double Verdandi and Skuld. Oh no, not double Verdandi and Skuld. I think we're potentially choosing to just keep all 7 cards removed from game. Only keeping 1 Verdandi. And then we're going to add some counters to the Orochi as well during that extra phase here. So up to 4 counters. Go to my turn. A castle. I can pay for 2 to play Earther and Verdandi, targeting his bird for a grand total of 6 damage. Choosing to not do anything with Verdandi at this point in time. Our keepers are alive, so we're going to go ahead and swing in for the 6 damage. He's going to flash in Dark Alice just to serve as a blocker and maybe see if he can draw into that Holy Nova maybe now, while also jump blocking. Flashes into another Dark Alice. Discards the Makoto. He knows he's not getting to play that this game. And then blocking the first Dark Alice. And then passing the turn there. I'm going to go ahead and use a Raise and Revive, bring back his own Athena. Go to his turn. Goddesses are currently online, so we've got a 11 and a 10, and then Orochi is currently a 6. I've got 5 current available at will. So at that point in time, Paul looks at what his hand is and just says, you know what, I actually don't have a way to come back from this, so rather than try to compete out for the draw, we're going to go ahead and just scoop it up. So that is the match. Hope you guys liked it. Deck profiles of both lists will be up later this week. And until next time, this is CMO73 saying class dismissed.